The Truth and the Circle Around It by K.G. Scott, page 94, chapter 6, A Killer in the Rain. (0203) August 28, 1988, Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. Carl Forbes was finished with his walk around patrol of the Cloverdale exhibition grounds. All was normal for the semi-retired security guard who had traded some graveyard shifts with Greg, one of his co-workers who was using his holidays to take his young family to Disneyland. His body still hadn't become used to the shift change, and he yawned almost every 2 or 3 minutes. Even with the fresh air to keep him alert. Even with the fresh air to keep him alert. Making the late night shift even more unpleasant was the fact that Carl could be described as a very small man. He's barely average height and is a very thin man, so even with the rain gear and sweater vest, he is shivering from the damp and the cold. It was quiet except for the large drops of rain coming down randomly, bouncing and plopping as they landed in the puddles and on the gravel. The only noise he could make out was the distant traffic, the occasional whinny of one of the horses in the stables, and the crunching of the gravel moving each time his feet touched down in the steps of his fast walk as he made his way across the parking lot. He could see his partner Felix standing in the wash of interior light in the control tower, which was just visible from this angle, overtop the highest point of the grandstands, but disappeared behind the tall roof of the structure as Carl made his way across the lot. Then he realized he needed to check in and went back to the gate he had just walked away from. Felix was just an object at this distance, but it was comforting to know he was there and that at 0245 he would be the one in the rain gear, walking around in the weather. Carl had retired from the park ranger service with a 30-year pension, courtesy of the province. He had spent almost 14 years at posting up north in the L. Wells Gray Provincial Park before moving to the lower mainland to be the overall supervisor at Pinecone Burke Provincial Park, just north of Coquitlam. For the last 3 years of his service, he took the job at the exhibition as a time passer and for the extra money, but he had only been there for a bit more than a year, which made him one of the new guys. When all was said and done, he didn't mind. It was a change and there was hardly any pressure. He aimed his maglite flashlight up towards the tower and blinked it 3 times, then pushed the call button and his portable radio. "Can you see my light, Felix?" "Oh yeah, Carl, no problem. You're on your way back from the far gate, I guess, eh?" "That's right. There's a half a dozen or so cars still in the lot. I'm going to take a quick look at them before I come back up." "Sure, Carl. Probably just left there by folks who took cabs home." "Right. Oh, that's my guess too." "Yeah, everyone was gone early from the bar tonight." Then Felix remembered a detail he hadn't passed on yet. Oh, hey, Carl. I just remembered that Katrina Lewis hasn't called in yet, and the alarm in the grandstand is inactive still. She's likely still tidying up. Well, okay there, Felix. How's this? You give her a call while I check these cars, and if she doesn't answer, let me know and I'll drop by on my way up. Sure, friend. I'll dial the main number for the bar and let you know. Both men were happy with the arrangement, and Carl picked up his step as the rain began to come down in a steady downpour. He shined his bright flashlight into the interiors of the vehicles as he made complete circles around them. They were scattered about the lot, but were all within 100 or so meters of each other in the corner of the lot closest to the entrance to the bar underneath the grandstands. He was just about to check the last vehicle when he noticed some movement in the shadows behind the large steel garbage bins outside the entrance to the kitchen. Carl, listen up. The sound of Felix's voice crackling over the speaker of the portable radio startled him as his attention was fixed on the movement. I just talked to Katrina. She'll be down. She'll be done in a few minutes. Are you still on the phone with her? No, I'm not, Carl, but I just hung up a few seconds before I called you. Okay, then, stay alert. I seen some movement outside the kitchen and behind the garbage dumpster. I thought it was maybe her, but now I don't think so. Then he aimed his light beam towards the area as he walked towards it. He was about 20 yards away from the dumpster when a raccoon came into his light and stood on its back legs as its eyes reflected the powerful light in two dots. Carl, you okay down there? I think so, buddy. I'm blinding a big old raccoon, but I'll take a closer look to make sure. Felix chuckled to himself and then answered back. Does he look dangerous from there? Oh, yeah. It looks like he's wearing a mask, and he's being awfully sneaky about the whole thing, too. Both men laughed out loud, away from the radio, and as Carl's flashlight beam moved away and quickly down to his feet before he pushed the button to switch it off, the raccoon ran away towards the darkness. Further down the building, Carl was about to run back to check the last car when he heard crunching in the gravel behind him. A large gloved hand cupped over his mouth and pulled back on his head. Whoomp! A large knife blade sunk deep into his back, moving through to his left lung and touched against his heart. Then the large gloved hand pushed him backwards and down to the ground on his back. The glove pressed on his face, forcing the back of his head hard into the loose gravel. Then, as if all in one motion with the fall to the ground, the killer's legs straddled Carl's body, while at the same time, the tall man's knees pushed on Carl's elbows, leaving the dying man nowhere to go and no way to get there. Before he could begin to fight back by kicking or trying to rotate or squirm in any defensive way, the large, sharp blade of the killer's knife penetrated into the left temple, causing instantaneous death. Make sure you check him out real close, Felix chuckled as he spoke. He might be trying to take off with something. The killer looked down at the radio, still clutched at Carl's left hand. Then he pulled out the knife from the temple and moved it about, carving his calling card into Carl's forehead. Did you hear me, Carl? Felix became a little serious. The killer pulled a plastic bag out of his jacket pocket and dropped it on Carl's chest as he stood up. Carl, the radio crackled with the shout. The killer ran away along the fence between the parking lot and a grassy ditch. Carl! Felix was suddenly very serious, very curious, and very worried. The killer had made it across the lot and through the fence. He was on the other side of 60th Street and into his waiting car. Hello, Felix. Katrina answered the special ring that alerted employees that it was an internal call. Katrina, is Carl in there with you? Felix's voice was excited and shaky. No, Felix. Katrina could tell something was wrong. Is the door locked? Yes, it's always locked. Don't let anyone in unless you know for sure it's me or Carl. What's happening, Felix? Now Katrina was shaky too. Just stay there. I'm calling the police. Felix was almost too nervous to think clearly until his training took over. Stay on the line with me. I'll use the other phone. Then Felix put Katrina on speakerphone and picked up the other phone and dialed 911. 0228, August 28th, 1988. The security company had sent a car to open the locked gate, and the RCMP had sent a cruiser. Then, within seconds of their arrival, Felix hit a series of switches on the main panel, and every light around the entire complex came on. Less than 30 seconds after that, one RCMP officer was checking Carl for a pulse while her partner was calling in for backup. Within 3 minutes, four other cruisers were on the property and a K9 unit was en route. By then, the killer had made his getaway without hardly being noticed. 0258, August 28, 1988. Now there are 7 pairs of officers and 2 K9 teams looking in, around, and behind every nook and cranny at Cloverdale Exhibition Grounds. The detectives from the Serious Crimes Division have arrived. An investigator from the coroner's office is pulling into the parking lot, and 2 ambulance crews are standing by. While the first crew on the scene is treating Felix for mild shock. All around is the ominous clatter of the horses and other livestock, letting the world around them know that the night has been interrupted and unsettled. Have we searched the entire grounds yet, Corporal? Detective Sergeant Paul Wallofson asks Corporal Diane Nixon as he gets out of his unmarked car. I'm not sure, Sergeant, but we must be very close, she answers politely. Is Dave Adams in charge? Paul asks as he looks around. No, he's on leave. Sergeant Travis is. He's over by the body of the slain guard. She points to an area circled by cruisers and ambulances, with their front ends pointed into a section of the parking lot. Okay, Corporal, thanks. Paul looks around at the puddles in the parking lot and then up at the sky. How long have you been here? My partner and I were first on the scene at 23 minutes after 2, about 35 minutes or so then. He comments as he looks at his watch. Is this your first homicide? No, but it's the worst. She looks at him with a shallow stare, then she shook all over like people do when they get that cold shiver. It's very graphic. They all are, I guess, but I'll take your word for it. Then I looked up as the 2 investigators from the coroner's office walked up. Ooh. Hello, folks. The older of the 2 men said to Paul and Diane as he stepped up to them. Hello, Jake. Hello, Lance. Paul greeted them. Hi, was all Diane could let out. Are the lab boys at the crime scene? Jake asked. Yes, it's Nancy Underwood and Harvey Belowski, Diane said. Oh, okay, good. Jake replied favorably. Corporal, has it rained since you've been here? Paul asked her. A little, but we took photos right away and covered the area around the man's body before any more drops came down on him. Well, okay, good work. Let's go see what we have. Paul mentioned for them to follow. Diane, I'll need you with us. Jake looked at her with a friendly face. Within the next hour, the grounds would be double checked. The president of the exhibition would be at the scene, and everyone would know they had a serial killer on the loose. The note left behind by the serial by the serial. By the killer was short, but informative. It read, I took advantage of another opportunity. The word opportunity was all capitals, and the hint was taken immediately by the detectives who were familiar with the case of the dead FBI agent in Washington state and another victim found a month before in downtown Vancouver, 1133 August 28, 1988. Later that morning, Detective Sergeant Paul Wallofson would have a meeting with detectives and investigators from the city of Vancouver, the city of Spokane, Washington, and the FBI. While at a house on Pitt River Road in Coquitlam, another cruiser has pulled up. Two officers have walked up the path and are looking at Carl's wife, Marie, across the kitchen table, about to give the worst news she'll ever hear, she'll ever receive. Up next, on page 103, chapter 7, Life Goes On. Or does it? Or does it?